In 1878, a group of prisoners spent 2 years digging a tunnel with spoons. 2 years! And when they finally broke through to the outside, guess what was waiting for them? Nothing. No cameras, no motion sensors, no alarm systems. Just a guy with a rifle who happened to be standing in the right spot at the right time. That's the wild part about old prisons. They had none of the tech we have today, and somehow they still kept most people locked up. So how did that actually work?
If you've ever wondered how prisons stopped people from escaping before cameras, sensors, and electronic locks even existed, stick around because the answer is stranger and smarter than you'd think. For most of human history, prisons weren't even really designed to hold people long term. Back in the 1700s and early 1800s, a lot of prisons were just holding cells. You sat there until your trial, then you got punished some other way, whether that was a fine, a public flogging, or worse. The idea of locking someone up for years as the actual punishment is newer than most people realize. So when long-term prisons started popping up, nobody really knew the best way to stop escapes. They had to figure it out through trial and error, and a lot of the errors were brutal.
The first tool they leaned on wasn't technology at all. It was architecture. Old prisons were built like fortresses because that was the only security system they had. Thick stone walls, small windows, narrow hallways that only fit one person at a time. Some prisons were built in a wheel shape with a guard tower in the middle, so one person could see down every hallway at once just by turning around. That design is called the panopticon, and the whole point was psychological. Prisoners never knew if they were being watched at any given second, so most of them just assumed they always were. Fear did the job that cameras do now. But architecture alone didn't stop everyone. Some prisoners were smart, patient, and had nothing but time. So prisons added a second layer: routine and headcounts. Guards would count prisoners multiple times a day, sometimes every couple hours. If a head count came up short, the entire prison would lock down immediately. No one moved until they found the missing person or confirmed an escape. This sounds simple, but it worked because it turned every prisoner into an unintentional witness. If someone escaped, everyone else's freedom got restricted too, which created pressure inside the prison itself. Prisoners didn't want their yard time or meals cut, so sometimes they'd actually rat out an escape plan just to protect their own routine. Now here's where it gets interesting, because guards couldn't be everywhere at once, so they came up with some clever low-tech tricks that a lot of people don't know about. One of the oldest tricks was called a telltale line. Guards would run a thin string or thread across hallways, tunnels, or ventilation shafts at ankle height, somewhere nobody would think to look. If a prisoner tried to sneak through at night, they'd break the string without even noticing. The next inspection, guards would check every string. If one was snapped, they knew someone had been moving where they shouldn't. It's basically a low-tech tripwire, and versions of this trick were still being used well into the 1900s. Another one, and this is kind of brilliant when you think about it. Guards used to sweep sand or fine dirt across floors near cell doors, tunnels, and yard fences at night. In the morning, they'd check for footprints. No footprints, no digging attempt. If the sand was disturbed, that told them exactly where someone had tried something. It's the same idea as a fresh coat of snow revealing footprints, except they were doing it on purpose every single night in every high-risk area. Prisons also relied heavily on something we don't think about as security: the prisoners themselves. Trusted inmates, sometimes called trustees, were given small privileges in exchange for keeping an eye on other prisoners. It sounds harsh, but it was incredibly effective. Nobody polices a group of people better than people from inside that same group who have something to lose. This system is honestly a big part of why prison culture developed the way it did, with its own rules, hierarchies, and codes of silence, all shaped around who could be trusted and who couldn't. Now, let's get into the part everyone actually wants to hear about: escape attempts, and why so many of them failed even without modern security. Alcatraz is the most famous example, and for good reason. In 1962, 3 inmates, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, pulled off one of the most legendary escapes in prison history. They used spoons and later a stolen electric drill to slowly widen the vents in their cell walls over months. They built fake heads out of soap, toilet paper, and real human hair from the barber shop and left them in their beds so guards doing night checks wouldn't notice they were gone. They built a raft out of raincoats, and then they vanished. To this day, nobody knows for certain if they survived or drowned in the bay. The FBI officially closed the case decades later, still unsolved. There's also a psychological trick a lot of old prisons used that's honestly kinda dark, but it worked. They would spread stories, sometimes true, sometimes exaggerated, about what happened to escaped prisoners who got caught. Public punishments, extended sentences, sometimes worse, depending on the era and country. The goal wasn't just to punish the person who tried to escape, it was to make every other prisoner think twice. Fear spread through word of mouth faster than any security system could act. In a weird way, prisons were running a kind of information warfare before that term even existed, using stories instead of screens to keep people in line. So when you really break it down, prisons before modern security worked because they attacked the problem from every angle at once. They made escape physically hard with walls and design. They made it get noticed fast with headcounts and tripwires, and they made it feel pointless with fear and social pressure from other prisoners. No cameras needed, just people paying very close attention all the time. And that's honestly the pattern behind almost everything humans figured out before modern technology existed. We didn't have the tools, so we got creative with the tools we did have. Subscribe if you want to see how people solved the next impossible problem before technology existed.